Hi, Rachel.
Hi, Kayla.
How are you?
I am doing great. I'm excited about podcasting with you.
Yeah, I'm excited too. We were connected and through the Instagram land, and it was an immediate. Our friend Lance was like, "You should talk to Rachel. You should have her on the podcast. You guys have so much in common." I immediately found you online. I think I messaged you before I even actually looked through your
Yeah.
stuff because I was like, I trust that. I trust that. Yeah, and you were a quick yes, so I appreciate that. Thank
Mhm.
you.
Well, thank you. I've
Mhm.
enjoyed really getting to check out a lot of your content. There was actually
Mhm.
there was a piece, I think it was a couple of months ago even, because now I've been following you for a period of time, but you
Mhm.
posted something about you know, I realized that I could do anything and
Mhm.
everything. So I
Mhm.
did anything and everything. And then I realized that I didn't need to. And I remember when I read this, I was like, all right, me and her, we need to talk because I felt that so deeply to
Yeah.
my core and it impacted me even.
Yeah, I remember that. I have goosebumps actually just saying that because that is like, I'd be lying if I said I was over that. Like I've moved past that thought
Mhm.
pattern. Like that still lives here for me for sure. It's so deep. that,
Yeah.
that belief, that story that we have to do so much all of the time. And we'll probably dive into that, I'm sure, as we talk about this journey that we've both been on.
hmm
But
You
before
know,
we, oh, no, you go.
I was just going to say, I think what resonated with me is so often like in our healing journey there's like this first part of like so much disbelief in ourself and what we're capable of being able to do. I know that's where I was, and once I realized, I was like, holy shit, I can do anything that I want. I can create anything. It was like you finally learned that like you are really the manifester of your entire life. And I remember stepping
Mhm.
into that power early on in my entrepreneurial journey, and I felt how empowering, like truly empowering and expansive that felt. But then there's like that second level of evolution where the story just shifts, and it's like, even though I can, I don't need to, and I have nothing to prove. And it's just
Yeah.
like a whole other level of power. So we can get into it
Yeah.
for sure.
Yeah. I have nothing to prove. I love that. My yoga teacher, who I did my training with, used to always say, and he was speaking it to new teachers who were terrified to go teach yoga. He's like, just remember, you have nothing to prove and everything to share. And I was like, oh, thank you for that. And I use it a lot. I'll use that
Mhm.
with clients. I'll use that when I'm feeling nervous. It's like, who am I
Yeah.
even trying to prove? And what am I trying to prove?
hmm
Okay,
It's
we'll go
interesting how
there.
much that comes up. Yeah.
Isn't it? Yeah. A question I would love to ask you before we dive in was what are you currently reclaiming?
Mm. So when you asked me that question a bit actually off air, the very first thing that came to my mind was full authenticity.
Mm. Mhm.
Full
Yeah.
authenticity of all of myself, and not saying that meaning that I'm purposely unauthentic in anything that I
Yeah.
do, but I think, we all struggle with fully allowing the greatest expression of ourself in every situation that we step into because, we choose attachment often over authenticity. We
Mhm.
choose wanting to feel like we fit in and love and blogging and, even diving so deep into my story, I didn't even realize it, but for a long time, I was really operating from that place myself.
Mhm.
And I thought I was Rachel. And these aren't conscious thoughts, right? They're solely deep integrated into our nervous system. So we don't understand the times where we shut down, where we don't speak up or speak our truth when we have something to actually say, when we say yes and we really want to say no, or we say no when we
Mhm.
really want to say yes. It's like, it's all of that moments. And I think that all comes back to first the full acceptance of
Mhm.
self, really
Mhm.
at the core. But I think that's been my healing journey. And I think so many of our healing journey is really healing that relationship with self to step boldly and authentically into all of who we are, even the
Mhm.
parts that, you know, I think early on we wanted to reject, we didn't like. We're
Mhm.
like, I don't like this part of me. I don't, this part of me is weird or awkward, all those thoughts and self-judgment,
Mhm.
but just that full authenticity in everything that I do.
Yeah. Thank you for that. It reminds me a couple of weeks ago, I was sitting in a cafe and just doing some writing, and I was people watching, which I really love to do. I'm always like, I wonder what their story is.
Mhm.
And I was looking at all of these people and wondering, like, what role are you playing right now? Who are you?
Mhm.
Who are you in this moment? Are you your true self? Are you the coworker who's trying to be nice? Are you the new friend who's trying to fit in? Like, we wear these masks or hats and we play these roles. I think a lot of the time without even knowing that we're doing it, with that desire to fit in, to be accepted, to feel like we belong, which is ultimately, yeah, as you know, a human survival. I get it.
Mhm.
And it's so interesting, and it's big work, and no one really taught us that. And so
Mhm.
here we are trying to figure it all out, and it brings up some big questions of like, whoa, who am I actually? Like, who am I? What do I actually want? What do I care about? What am I excited about?
Yeah.
So I'm here for that reclamation. It's a good one.
Yeah. I think, you know, it's based off of our upbringing and then the perceived notion of what the world demands often, gets
Mhm.
so entangled about around who we are and who we think we should be, which often stems so deeply back to, who do I need to show up as in order to be loved in this world? It's not
Mhm.
always that conscious thought that we have. And as I
Mhm.
said earlier, like when we're babies, like when we're younger, we choose attachment over authenticity. And,
Yeah.
there's such this interesting feeling when we talk about attachment, because especially when it comes to like dating culture and all of that, people are like, oh,
Mhm.
attachment. It's kind of like this icky word. But I actually heard this reframed recently by somebody who said it's really connection, right?
Mm.
So attachment is connection.
Yeah.
So what does that mean is we choose connection with other
Mhm.
people often in lieu of authenticity. Why? Why do we do that? Often not consciously, but because, we are relationship people. We can't survive without connection with other people. So when it comes
Yeah.
down to when we're younger and a baby, if it comes down to, even as a kid, getting connection from our mom or a dad in order to feel loved
Mhm.
versus like being all of who we are or just all of our obnoxious self as we could be as
Mhm.
little kids,
Mhm.
we'll do what we need to do in order to create that connection because the
Yeah.
connection is so needed for survival ultimately. But what happens over time is, we put on these masks, we put on these layers, and these layers that
Mhm.
really build as a byproduct of which really is a form of trauma, right?
Mhm.
Trauma is also another word that now has become very widely used. But
Mhm.
another way it was reframed to me recently is, trauma is not always the big things that happen to you, but it's what happens inside of you. And trauma can actually be not feeling seen, loved, or heard. And I think we can all go back to times in our life where we were younger, we didn't feel seen, loved, or heard. So what does
Yeah.
that really create in us? It creates, okay, what do I need to do? Because that's like our innate need in order to feel seen, loved, and heard, in order to cultivate that connection. But I think the
Mhm.
beautiful journey is, as we put on these masks over time, we reach this point in our life of like, okay, like you said, who is really Rachel? Who is Kayla? What is it that I actually truly desire for my life, and why am I feeling such a disconnect in myself, which often can manifest in, unhappiness, anxiety, depression, can manifest in
Mhm.
physical related symptoms. I work a lot with
Yeah.
that in my practice. So gut issues, hormone issues, nervous system imbalances. But I think when we learn and really step more into our authenticity, healing can't help but begin to ripple out because it's such a huge part of us being in our health and being able to actually heal from a lot of these things.
Yeah. And this might be jumping the gun a little bit. I mean, I know what you do for work and we'll,
Yeah.
we'll get into it. So at what point did you connect the dots in your work that the gut issues, as an example, the hormonal imbalances actually did have like an energetic and emotional component to them?
Mm. After I kept relapsing over and over again, and don't get me wrong, I made a ton of progress, and ultimately my gut issues is what got me into functional medicine because being told I needed to actually have my entire large intestine removed. So there's this whole story in of that, and why I started to seek more functional root cause and holistic means, and got into learning all about the gut and the gut microbiome, and which was already a massive shift from what Western medicine was really talking about. And I started on this journey of, now that I really understood that a lot of my core issues were stemming from a ton of dysbiosis, so imbalance of bacteria in my gut. I started to begin a lot of these functional, gut healing protocols. So this was addressing a lot of the bacteria overgrowth. This was, healing my gut lining, all of these things that, again, were still very pivotal to me compared to the traditional Western medicine approach. And, I even, I went to Baylor for nutrition and dietetics, but was still very much in line with the ADA, the American Dietetic Association, and more of the Western medicine philosophy on nutrition. But I think I realized when there was really this much deeper emotional connection, and really the root cause was a wounded 8-year-old little girl who didn't feel seen, loved, and was really pushing her body to these extreme limits. I realized a lot of that as I was working deliberately on healing my gut. And I would do these protocols like over and over again. I probably did multiple rounds of antimicrobials on my gut. So I'm addressing what is quote unquote the root cause, but it wasn't really the root cause. It was what was off internally in my body. And yes, as a byproduct of my microbiome being imbalanced and having SIBO and leaky gut, of course, this was contributing to hormone issues, thyroid issues, brain fog, and all of that. But after relapsing so many times, and also just, to be honest, being just very unhappy with where I was at, I started to really lean into doing more of the inner work, plus a breakup helped. I would
It
say.
always helps.
Yeah, breakup plus health issues, it's, catapults us into a whole healing journey of really looking at ourselves. And, I had to just take massive responsibility and ownership. And, I think there was just that first awareness of, man, Rachel, you are running at such a high speed and you are running so fast. What are you chasing? Like, what are you really chasing? And it was that question that led to probably 100 other different questions, but it really started me on this journey of seeking more answers. Why is it such a struggle? And my body at the time was also just so stuck operating in a fight or flight state. Like I was living in the sympathetic dominant state. So, it was as I started to embark on addressing my nervous system and this healing journey, which I'm still on. I'll be the first person to say it's definitely like, I don't know if we get to a point where we're like, okay, I'm healed, I'm done with doing the work.
No.
But it was as I started to incorporate that and have some big awarenesses about how I was relating to myself, really my relationship with myself, that things started to actually move in the right direction. And then it just got to the point where one day to be honest, I just was living my life, and I just was like, wait, I can't think of the last time like I actually had gut issues or had these symptoms of all of this. And it's interesting because you notice it so much when you have it, but
Mhm.
when you don't have it, you don't even notice it's there. So it was like this beautiful moment where I was like, oh my gosh, I think like my body's healed. And when I meant like healed, like the physical, the gut issue side of it all.
Mhm. Wow. And so you started, we'll stay in this because I am curious to go into more depth in your healing process, because I think that is where you and I have some really sweet similarities, but we also have the similarities of the fitness industry,
Mm.
competing and modeling and being in this constant
Mhm.
state of go, 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 just solely for aesthetics and not so much for, I'll speak for myself. My focus was not health, it was aesthetics.
Mine was
And
aesthetic,
so,
but
yeah.
yeah, I thought
And
that's what health was.
right. Well,
That's
I
what
think
my definition of health. If I was shredded and
absolutely.
I was physically
Totally.
fit, I was healthy, and man, did I have a big wake up call and how
Yeah.
the meaning of health has been so redefined.
And so, did you have any gut health prior to competitive living and modeling and deep in the fitness world, or did it come from that lifestyle?
It came
I
from
know,
that.
sorry, I know it didn't come from it. We've talked about the root, but like presented.
Yeah, it helped create it for
Yeah.
sure. It was
Yeah.
part of the creation. So, um, I think it's interesting, right? Because it's like at what point of our lives do just things begin to operate at a much higher caliber
Mm-hmm.
from where they were before? And I think, for me, finding fitness and bodybuilding, it started off as like a very healthy venture. And I think for
Mm-hmm.
so many people, it does. And often, though, for a lot of people, we're stepping into maybe because we don't feel good about ourselves, right? It's
Mm-hmm.
okay, I feel insecure.
Mm-hmm.
I'm overweight. I don't like the way that I look. Maybe I feel crappy every single day. So we step into it and we find this new sense of confidence. We find this new
Mm-hmm.
sense of strength, this new sense of power, which there is such a beautiful part about that. But I think when you haven't really done a lot of the work, so much of the focus eventually can get shifted into that as, all right, it is now these results and the physical part of it that is creating my confidence, and our worth is so much tied into that. And then
Mm-hmm.
especially, I know for me, like a lot of my, 8-year-old little girl wounds had
Mm-hmm.
manifested in achievement.
Yeah.
So combining both of those two things with the achievement, it's like, all right, well, if I feel good here, how far can I really take it? And it was like that same piece of, you don't know it at the time, but like trying to prove something to who?
Mm-hmm.
To
Yeah.
myself of
Yeah.
worthiness.
Mm-hmm. And so you're still deeply in the world of fitness for yourself. What's your relationship like now to that world?
It's very different for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Competing was a whole nother area. And even I had a client it was a few months ago now. It's probably over a year ago now. Time flies.
Just
But
the other day.
she asked me to prep her for a bodybuilding competition. I was like, "Ugh, I don't think it's going to be what you think it is." But she was kind of early on in her journey, and she had an autoimmune condition, Hashimoto's. And I was like, all right, I'll help you prep for it, in a very healthy way.
Mm-hmm.
And I share this because I ended up going to support her in the competition. And I remember just stepping back into that area that I had been out
Mm-hmm.
of now for so long. And as I
Mm-hmm.
stepped back in, I felt such a shift in my nervous system from everybody's energy just being in that space when
Mm-hmm.
I was in it. And I was like, oh my gosh, this feels so different. And I could just feel all of the girls' energy while they were in that room, and just felt so much empathy, but also sadness simultaneously, because my parts of me could connect with where they were at now.
Mm-hmm.
And not saying that everybody operates from that point, but I think it is a lot of us, whether we're aware of it or we're not aware of it. So fitness for me, it's very much different than what it was then. Fitness for me has really manifested in just something that I do in order to feel good every single day. Like there is definitely that physical part. And, I wish I could be the person who says like there's not any part of me that ties worth into the physical body. I hope to get there one day. I'm not that
Mhm.
evolved yet by any means,
Mhm.
or the person to say that. But my relationship with it is completely different. My relationship with food is completely different. There's not I'm pushing you to do these things because you have to. It's like I
Mhm.
truly and genuinely enjoy working out. I love the way that it makes me feel. I love the way that I feel
Mhm.
during it. Like a lot of my workouts are my playtime. Like I'm working out in my garage. I'm putting on music that I love and I'm just having the best time with myself. And,
Yeah.
I'm dancing and it's just this whole playtime and there's not a whole lot of pressure in it. And
Mhm.
then with nutrition, back then it was a lot of tracking macros and
Mhm.
calories and, just very type A. It has to fit into this box. And
Mhm.
for me now, it's just a lot more intuitive. Like there's definitely structure to it because I do believe in structure and routine, but
Mhm.
there's nothing that's necessarily restrictive. And honestly, like fitness and nutrition, it's like the last thing that I think about anymore
Yeah.
versus back then it was all that I thought about because I was
Mhm.
so focused on trying to achieve a very specific outcome in my physical body. And
Mhm.
it was very contractive energetically versus now I feel like fitness and the food that I eat, it's very energetic to me.
Yeah. It's beautiful. So you correct me if I'm wrong, but your journey was fitness competitions, modeling, coaching, looking amazing all the time, to diagnosis with IBS, almost having to have your large intestine removed, insert your journey of healing your gut. What was that like? Because we live in the Western world, and I remember watching something you shared on your Instagram, and I might not say it the way you said it, but it was essentially like, I'll say one of the missing pieces in our Western medicine, and that piece around how they don't look at the root cause, right? It's always this band-aid of the symptom versus the idea of like food as medicine. And then the
Mm.
piece that I really giggled at and was like, wow, yes, this is so accurate, is that Western medicine doesn't look at food. Then we have a food industry that doesn't care about health. And then there's a health industry that doesn't pay attention to the food. And so
Yeah.
there's this crazy cycle. And so I imagine that I can only imagine that being in a time where you need someone to be paying attention and supporting your health healing, that what's mostly available to us is not that. And so how did you like talk a little bit about that process of like, not being supported by Western health, reaching your little tendrils out to find the support you needed, and then how did that spiral into where you are now?
Yeah, I know what quote you're talking about. So it is, we have a food industry that pays no attention to health, and then we have a health industry that pays no attention to food. We
Mm-hmm.
have doctors and physicians just dishing out, billions of dollars in pharmaceuticals without actually, getting to the root cause. And I think truly if
Yeah.
most people like were to get out of their house, go outside and we were to like all stand next to each other, like we would realize that like we're not well. Like
Mm-hmm.
we're not well as a society. And when I say that, I'm not just talking about from a physical aspect, like 100% the physical part is
Mm-hmm.
there,
Mm-hmm.
with people struggling with these chronic health issues, where it's these chronic health issues that people are really left behind, right? Western medicine is
Mm-hmm.
incredible when it comes to a lot more acute based health issues, break
Yeah.
an arm, you have a heart attack, you get in a car accident, like all of those things, we need Western
Mm-hmm.
medicine. You're at a very bad place in your health. You develop cancer. Like Western medicine saves lives, but it's these middle
Mm-hmm.
ground people, me, wherever I used
Mm-hmm.
to be, we're struggling with these chronic health issues,
Mhm.
chronic gut issues, bloating, GI, struggling with chronic fatigue, brain fog, anxiety, where Western medicine doesn't really have a solution other than really offering a band aid solution, which is dishing out a bunch of medication to
Mhm.
manage the symptoms. And that's what happened to me. I ended up on 5+ medications. I was on prescription laxatives so I could go to the restroom. I was on birth control because when I was 16, I had acne. So the birth control was
Mhm.
fix the acne and then get rid of, all of the PMS symptoms to go along. So the
Mhm.
miracle pill. After
Yeah.
competing, I had hypothyroidism. So I was put on thyroid medication. I didn't mention this, but actually, when I was also 16, my mom put me on an antidepressant,
Mm.
as a young girl, because I was struggling a lot with depression.
Mhm.
But the thing was, if my mom actually would have taken the time and gotten to know what was happening in my life, I was dealing with a ton of bullying. Like I
Yeah.
had the whole mean girl thing was happening for me. So,
Mm.
all of these things, there's a root of it all. But
Mhm.
what's unfortunate is we're offering these band-aid approaches for, I say it very specifically, but for these chronic health issues, anxiety,
Mhm.
depression, we're giving these trash can diagnoses like IBS, saying you have
Mhm.
irritable bowel syndrome. We don't actually know why your gut is irritable. So we're going to treat the symptoms. The same thing with mental health issues, where
Yeah.
most people who are struggling with anxiety and depression, it's just a diagnosis based off of symptom clusters. So if
Mhm.
you fit all of the criteria for major depressive disorder, you are given the diagnosis of major depressive disorder. It's like, well,
Mhm.
yes. And then you are offered medication to manage that. And I think we are all not well when it comes to our health. If we were to really, get to know um, what's really happening. And I think a big part of it is a lot of the society imprints that we do have, and how much we place so much of our worth in all of these things that are outside of us. I think, I've definitely have had to really work through a lot of that in my own life. And I think there's a lot of the deep rooted parts of it. But, you know, for me, on this entire journey of like trying to get to the root cause, I just got to the point of really being fed up and sick and tired with this Western medicine approach. And it was honestly this that big wake up call moment where they were like, all right, we're going to cut out your large intestine, which I share this story actually at the time. I was like, all right, cool. Like I was so ready for them to actually
Mhm.
do the surgery. So I also connect and relate with people on such a deep way who are in a point in their life where they are very, very desperate, and I
Mhm.
talk a lot about medicine, and I'm actually not against medicine by any means. I think for some people, it can get them out of a really bad place.
Mhm.
But I think the problem is relying on medicine as our sole source of healthcare in the
Mhm.
United States, where at the core, it's really not healthcare, it's sick care,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
It's we're
Yeah.
sick, we're going to address these issues, and yes, maybe utilize these for a period of time to get you into a better place, but it should be so that we can really dive into what a lot of these core areas are stemming from. So for me, as I just became obsessed really with getting to the root cause of my health issues, I started to work with a different functional medicine providers. Um, for myself, I ended up really having to put a lot of the puzzle pieces together. But what I really wish that I had at the time was somebody who actually took a time to really get to know me and get to know my life. And that's really what we offer our clients or patients who come to my practice, Rachel Scheer Nutrition, because the truth is, if somebody would have actually taken the time to like get in the weeds with me, to like really get to know Rachel and what was
Mhm.
happening in my life, like to ask a little bit about the things that I've walked through in my life, to ask about
Mhm.
trauma, to ask about the relationships in my life, to ask about my nutrition and what I was putting into my body, to look at my exercise. To someone, it was very obvious, look, this girl was at 10% body fat. Like, that was a little
Mm-hmm.
bit of an obvious one. But if
Mm-hmm.
someone would have actually taken the time to get to know me, in my opinion, a lot of these things were pretty obvious.
Yeah.
But our system doesn't really allow for that, for us to, or for physicians to really actually ask a lot of these deeper questions, which is really often what is cultivating all of these chronic health issues. But it also
Mm-hmm.
requires the person on the other end, right? It's a two-way street. Yes, it is the health care, and that's where I think functional medicine can come in, along
Mm-hmm.
with other things, because the healing journey, right? I'm sure you can relate to this. It's not just this one thing is going to
Mm-hmm.
do all of my healing. My journey has been so much of, all right, I pull this in. All right, I'm pulling all of these different
Mm-hmm.
things in on my journey, but it also takes the person on the other side to be willing to take massive responsibility over their
Mm-hmm.
healing. And I think there's also a lot of people who, maybe not that they don't want to, but they haven't gotten to that point, at least in their journey, where
Mm-hmm.
they're also willing to take massive responsibility. And we can think of responsibility as I'm responsible to actually do a lot of these changes and make these big shifts in my life. Because we've
Mm-hmm.
even had people who come to sign up with our practice and they're like, yes, I want the healing. And we dive into it, and a lot of it always comes back to lifestyle. And a lot of these things, like, that is the only way where a lot of these things manifest. It's emotional stress, it's
Mm-hmm.
dietary stress, it could be physical, like a metabolic stress, like overtraining
Yeah.
and injury, or it could be a bit environmental, but it always comes back to those. So
Mm-hmm.
we have to be willing to make the big and radical shifts in our life when we
Yeah.
get the message that these are the things that are really creating disease for me.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's interesting. You're speaking to it just a little bit, but what I heard, and correct me if I'm wrong, but is there some resistance at that point for some people? Because it, like, they don't want to change their life so much. Like, is that where it's almost like that's where we as a society have just gotten so accustomed to just taking I'll just take a prescription. I'll just take a medicine for that because that's a lot easier than making the implementations and the changes. I was having a conversation with someone the other day about, I can't actually remember what it was about, the root of the conversation, but convincing someone, I'll use that word, to use meditation as an example to support their anxiety versus a Xanax or something, right? The Xanax is going to help really quickly, but the
Mm-hmm.
meditation is going to take some time and it's going to take effort. And our our society is so quick to just take I'm going to take the quick thing. And so do you meet resistance with people?
100%. All the
Okay.
time.
Yeah.
All the time. I think, you know, often we get to the point of like, okay, something's not working in my life. I'm not
Mhm.
happy. I'm not feeling good. I know I need to make these shifts. Maybe you're someone who has the awareness of, okay, I've gone even the Western medicine around. Like, those are a lot of the people who come to my practice. They've like gone, they've tried, and they've been
Mhm.
massively let down through Western medicine, because really there's not a whole lot that Western medicine can do for a lot of these chronic health issues. So then they
Mhm.
come to us at that point. Some people are definitely ready and they're just like, whatever you tell me to do, I'll do it.
Mhm.
Some people maybe even start from that point, but then as we get into it, we realize that the healing journey is actually going to take longer than a 6-month program. And this is
Mhm.
a lot of the ladies that I work with who, a lot of it is more an emotional connection, right?
Mhm.
So maybe they're struggling a lot with nervous system imbalances, their body's stuck more in a sympathetic state, and the way they've been living their life has been really a big part of what has been manifesting in a lot of their gut issues. So, we'll
Mhm.
start usually first a bit more tactical and on like, all right, we're going to do these protocols. But I think for some people, they realize that their journey is going to it's going to be a little bit of a journey, and it's not going to be just, hey, this 6-month program or box. And I say that so openly because I'm like, of course I want everyone to come to my program, but everybody's
Mhm.
so unique in what their root causes are of what are leading to these things. And then I think there's the third person who, they're like, yes, I want to make these changes. I know that I want to heal and get to the root of these issues. I want health. They want it. And then they make the investment even, which is an act of saying, I'm all in and
Mhm.
I'm willing to do
Mhm.
this. I 100% believe that. But then when it comes down to making these shifts and change, often our behaviors really begin to come out, which very often there's reasons why we are at, not very often, there's always reasons as to why, we're at. And, if we've had certain core dominating behaviors, like for me, when I get in a triggered state, I get very avoidant.
Mhm.
Um, a lot of those things can begin to come up. Also, a lot of fear begins to come up at that point in time. I think at the early stages, we're thinking about what we're going to get. Like we're thinking of the health, we're thinking of the positive, or yes, feeling better, no more bloating, more energy, all of these different things. But then as we begin to look at all of these changes, it's like, okay, I'm going to actually have to give up a lot of these things. And
Mhm.
we have these things in our life that we do, not because like we may even have the awareness of like this isn't helping me, but there's obviously some kind of benefit that we're getting from it,
Mhm.
right? If we think about, somebody who knows that drinking is not good for them, right? They know that that's probably playing a massive role in their gut issues and their chronic fatigue and a whole host of different symptoms. But yeah, that is one of their sole ways that they create connection in their
Mhm.
life, by
Mhm.
going out with friends. And then all of a sudden now there's, all right, I'm realizing this is not helping my health, but actually removing that from my life is going to actually take away something that is very valuable to me, or at least the
Mhm.
belief of something that's very valuable to me. A lot
Mhm.
of fear comes up, and it's like, I can't quit that because there's these things that I'm going to have to give up in my life. So it's like, that's where
Yeah.
that point really comes. And I think for a lot of us, that's where the why has to be so strong for us to be
Mhm.
willing. Um, and it can definitely be a bit of the journey. There's still certain things I know in my own life that I'm like, man, this isn't, something that's maybe necessarily serving you in the big picture side of things,
Mhm.
but it's serving us in some sort of a way. So we keep
Yeah.
it. And I think it's being in that place where it's hard, for a lot of people, because there's going to be difficulty in giving up what we're so used to and accustomed. And I think when often fear comes up too, of like what we're going to actually have to give up or maybe miss out on, especially if there's like connection. I think that's the biggest fear that most people have:
Mhm. Mhm.
connection and safety. As much as we want to say like we don't, we don't chase after safety like we do, like of being comfortable.
Mhm.
And that's a really scary place to have to step into.
Yeah. Yeah. Whew. Question. This feels a little bit like a hard left or hard right here, but it's close to my heart, and so I want to speak about it. Breath work.
Mm.
Am I correct in my memory that you have recently started facilitating breath?
Mm-hmm. I
Tell me about
recently
your
went through, yeah,
Yeah, tell me about your journey, because breathwork changed my life completely.
yeah.
So I'm curious.
Um, Nervous system imbalances, I think, as a high performer, as very type A personality, has always been something that I've had to work with for myself. And as I
Mhm.
mentioned earlier, it was a big part of a lot of my wake up call of like, all right, I'm operating so much in this sympathetic dominant state. So I've done so many different things on my healing journey. Like I've done the meditation, cold water therapy. Um, I've done a lot of different things, and it wasn't until actually this last year, which I'd done a little bit of some breath work prior, but it was a very different experience for me. I actually did a solo trip, and I went to
Mhm.
Tulum,
Mm.
over Christmas. And I did a somatic breathwork journey with a practitioner there. I did a couple of group, but this one in particular was a one-on-one journey. And it was one of the most profound experiences I've ever had. You could have thought I did some, psychedelic experience
Mm-hmm.
because I
Mm-hmm.
literally had this incredible like interaction in another quantum life with my dad. And my dad is actually mentally ill and disabled. So not only has he struggled with his mental health his entire life, he actually is currently homeless, but he's also struggled a lot with his physical health. So, I haven't had a father for a lot of my life looking back, even
Yeah.
though I had a father. I didn't have the father that I really needed. And in this breathwork journey, it was this incredible experience. And I'm just bawling my eyes out. And
Mm-hmm.
I've never sobbed so much in my entire
Mm-hmm.
life. But I literally had this out of body experience where I met my father in another quantum life, and I met him in his perfectly healed form. And it was the true essence of who he is, right? Because all of us currently in like this life form, like all the physical stuff and even like all the stuff that we carry and the pain and all of that, it's really not truly the essence of who we are. Like it's not who we are. And so often, like I almost could get emotional, but like
I am crying.
yeah,
Yeah.
we see that as who people are, right? And we judge people so much based off of all of those things. Even for ourselves, the judgment that we place on ourselves. And it was this beautiful experience of getting to meet the true essence of my dad, just perfect mental health, physical health, just everything. And it was in this breathwork journey that he just actually said to me, he's like, I'm sorry. I'm sorry that I wasn't the father that I wasn't there for you the way that you needed me to be there. But I'm so proud of you. And I'm proud of you not because of your achievements or all of that. I'm proud of the woman that you've become and what you've been able to, who you've become without me. And in this journey, he actually picked me up and he held me in a way, like a very masculine hold of a father holding his daughter that I don't even actually have. I don't even have a memory of my dad actually holding me in that way in this lifetime. And like, this is literally what happened in the breathwork journey. And again, I'm just like sobbing my eyes out throughout all of this. And I woke up, I guess you could say woke up
Yeah.
from that. And I just was like, oh my gosh. And the amount of healing that just took place in that one journey, I don't even know fully what it all undid for me, but I know
Mm-hmm.
that like so deeply it undid so much of probably a lot of the achievement and even masculine like wounds that I had been carrying for so long. And I
Mm-hmm.
even came out with just like such a different outlook on people and even my father. And what was interesting is I actually had him blocked for a long time, and it was like Christmas Eve, I think, when I did this. And I remember talking with the girl who facilitated the journey, and I'm like, I think I want to call my dad.
Yeah.
And she was like, okay, you can call him, but you just can't expect that version of him to show up. And I was like, no, I don't. And it just gave me this gift of being able to look at him in just such a different light of like, even though he's showing up and in this with all of these traumas, because so much of his mental health has really been a byproduct of a lot of his own trauma that he's
Mm-hmm.
had from his father passed down. And I truly think
Mm-hmm.
a lot of mental illness is a lot of unaddressed trauma,
Yeah.
but just being able to fully see him, and it wasn't even just him, but being able to see all people, behind everything that we carry.
Wow. I wow. I feel like I just need to like sit with that. That's really, really beautiful. Thank you for sharing. Ooh. Mm-hmm. So yeah, breathwork's a big deal.
Breathwork's a big deal. Yeah. After
Oh my
that, I was
gosh.
like, all right, there's something to this. And
Mm-hmm.
it really gave me the intuition and nudge to just lean into it a bit more for myself. And I felt such a deep calling of, I'd done so much of like the talk therapy and all of the other different things. And I'm like, this is so different because sometimes we're trying to use so much of the mind, to create this healing. We're trying to understand it. It's the stories that we tell ourselves. But so much of the pain that we carry, I truly think we can't even always fully comprehend. And it's really stored deeply into our body. It's stored so deeply into our nervous system. And I think what's so incredible about breath work is just the allowance of the expression and the emotion to be able to leave the body. And I think that's what I've experienced with a lot of somatic breath work is it's this beautiful catalyst of, yeah, it does all these incredible things for like helping regulate the nervous system, but it's also been a way to really tap in and lean in and allow for a lot of suppressed emotions that have been, you know, often stifled for so long to really come out and to be able to have an expression of that. And I think that in itself is so healing, and it doesn't involve any kind of, you know, having to talk or necessarily understand.
Yeah, a lot of what we hold is pre-verbal. Like there just wouldn't even be words for it. Even if you could comprehend words, what we take in is pre-verbal. It's before there was words. It's in our cells. It came with us. What a beautiful addition to your work.
Mhm.
What a beautiful, beautiful addition. Speaking of your work, I know you're a bit of a you have a couple things. You have a couple balls in the air. You've got your functional medicine nutrition. Tell us a little bit about that. I also want to know about the evolved woman.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So I have my practice. That's Rachel Scheer Nutrition. And then this last year, I had a lot of women coming to me who wanted to get certified and learn the RSN functional nutrition approach. So actually, just the end of last year, I launched a functional nutrition certification. And so that's the RSN Institute of Functional Nutrition. So it's teaching the root cause method that we use in my practice. So there's the version that is just really focused a lot on nutrition, and in functional medicine, there's a lot of different functional medicine practitioners. I
Mm-hmm.
find functional nutrition in particular to be really powerful because so much of it comes back to nutrition. And now that functional medicine is even becoming a lot more well known, a lot more people are doing functional medicine, but it even becomes a bit of just, okay, here's the test. Now here are the supplements. Where a lot of what my approach is I hope people have learned from listening to this is it's deeper. Like it is the
Mm-hmm.
testing. It is, yes, often targeted supplement protocols. We do utilize that a bit. We need to really use food as medicine,
Mm-hmm.
nutrition to heal the body, but it's also a lot of these other different things. And I'm not definitely not a therapist, or I don't do like necessarily like a lot of that type of work. But for me, the somatic breath work, I think, is that beautiful addition of being able to help people a bit more on the emotional side. And sometimes like
Mm-hmm.
my role is really, identifying what a lot of these root causes are, and somebody actually creating their own awarenesses of where these things are stemming from, and
Mm-hmm.
then stepping forward themselves into
Yeah.
the journey and direction that they need to go in. So that's the
Mm-hmm.
practice, the certification, and then I have a mastermind, the evolution.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the Instagram page is Evolved Women, which I think you were mentioning there.
Mm-hmm.
But so the evolution, the name actually itself, I created this because a lot of my own journey and story and honestly entrepreneurial journey has always been taking everything that I've walked through and then turning it outward and then wanting to help other people do the exact same. And I talk about how this is really the like evolution that I believe like a lot of conscious entrepreneurs are on, right? I've
Mm-hmm.
walked through so many of these things myself. I've gone through the journey. I haven't just read it in a textbook or taken the course, although those things are great. You can do that as well. I've done
Yeah.
plenty of that in my life. But it's like I've taken these things and I have such a deep connection and there's already so much like why behind that when it's something we walk through, but then to be able to I feel like this is where healing actually can become full circle. It's like when we can take those things and we can turn it outward and then help other people. And so that mastermind is really about empowering women to take the things that they've walked through in their life. A lot of them are in the functional nutrition space. Just probably attract a lot of that given what I do and help it turn outward and help them create the business and the abundance that they want in their life.
Mm-hmm. Are you, this isn't the right wording. I know I trust that you're satisfied with the work you do. I think it's beautiful. But is there more? Like, is there anything else that you're like, ooh, that might be fun to create one day?
I think I've paused for a little while on creating anything.
Okay. Good girl.
I think that there's so much inside of me that like wants to be birthed and wants to be creative. I think old me would jump on everything that I wanted to create, hence the reason as to why I sort of have 3 businesses, which I've realized has been very difficult to actually manage. So a lot of where I'm at right now has been more so not bigger, not more, but better in the things that I'm currently working on. Now, does that not mean that there's not going to be other things that I like dream and I scheme up on and I want to like bring to life? Of course, there's going to be, but I think just like where I'm at least right now in my journey, it's actually making everything that I have more efficient and actually freeing up a lot more of my time.
Mm-hmm.
And that's actually been a huge challenge for me to
Yeah.
say no. It can be
Yeah.
just as challenging as for the person to step boldly into, yes, I'm going to go after this. I'm like, well, it's just as challenging to say no to myself of like, all right, not right
Mm-hmm.
now, not right
Mm-hmm.
now. And I actually think I'm in a place where I'm like, I want to kind of go more inward and do a lot of my own work on myself before I step out and I bring even more to the world.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that's the way we bring it the best is when we have fully, just as you have with your nutrition and your health support. It's like, yeah, you can read the textbook or you can live it. And there's a difference. There's a difference having
Mm-hmm.
it be fully embodied and come from a knowing place versus just I read this and I think this is the thing. So
Mm-hmm.
I appreciate that. Is there any final tidbits, last bits that you feel really excited to share or talk on that we didn't cover? We have time.
We covered a lot of good stuff.
We did cover some good stuff. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. No,
Where can the people find you?
I've really enjoyed this conversation.
Yeah, me too.
You can follow me on Instagram at Rachel
Mm-hmm.
Scheer. My practice is at Rachel Scheer Nutrition.
Mm-hmm.
Website is my name as well, rachelsheer.com.
Mm-hmm.
Pretty easy.
Mm-hmm. Keeping it simple. I like it. I'll link all of the things. Yeah, all of the things. Thank you for spending some time here with me.
Thank you, Kayla. It's been a
Mm-hmm.
pleasure.
Yeah, have a beautiful, beautiful day.
Thank you.